Hard work, real talk, no shortcuts. I'm Joseph Cabrera. This is American Operator. All right, team. Here in studio with Wade Lombard. Man, an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. So good to have you back in, man. I know you're a busy guy, so we appreciate the time.
I love being here, man. I feel like the little bit of time we spent together has been really a lot of fun and interesting, and I love learning. And so I'm here to pick your brain as much as you are to pick mine, man.
Well, ask away anything you want. And at the very least, what we did, you can tell that this studio did a little bit of a transformation. So we made a lot out of these little walls, man, but it was a cold white jail cell, as our folks were saying beforehand. So you've come in here now with a much more upgraded status.
Feels warm to me. I like it. It's small but mighty.
Well, I appreciate that, man. It's good to have you in. I have, man, there's so many things we can cover. And I know you've done a lot of things, and, you know, everything from the moving industry all the way into, you know, building some of this most incredible, really forms of art that happen to be places that people live in. So I want to just cover all those things. But I guess before starting all that, I'd just love to kind of share with folks kind of Wade in the early days. Was he always this guy that was going to get into business and do his own thing, or was this a very different outlook for you when you were growing up?
You know, I think it's a bit of a mix. I'll start by saying that I did some homework and listened to some podcasts from you guys, and I was struck by something. You know, I think the last podcast you guys did was of a guy who played professional baseball, went to West Point, you know, and as I listened to this guy, I'm like, this guy's one in a billion. You know, he came out of the womb as a leader, and that couldn't be more different than my story. And, you know, for any listeners that have ever felt average, then you've come to the right place, because that's where, you know, in so many ways things started for me, at least the way I kind of reflect on it. You know, I say, you know, I grew up in Alabama, and I use the same thing. You know, Alabama's 49th in education, and I didn't do that well there. You know, and so, yeah, I had a learning disability. So, you know, I was probably an above average athlete, but not great. I was a below average student. I just, you know, never really saw myself as, or I struggled to see myself as anything but average. And so, you know, I don't know that I was aware, you know, in those early formidable years of what I wanted to do, but there's a couple of relationships, and I'll keep going back there over and over. These couple of relationships that really changed everything. So one are my parents. My dad was an entrepreneur, so I watched him build businesses and hung around those businesses. You know, he had, you know, like automotive repair shops, and I would be in there in the hot summers at 15 years old, changing and balancing tires and changing oil and that kind of thing. And so I was around being an entrepreneur and my dad. And so went to college and got connected with the president of the school there, a guy named Dr. Paul Kahn, also very entrepreneurial guy. And he became my mentor. And to this day, you know, he's 80 now. I consider him to be a hero of mine. And so I think when I look back, it wasn't anything inside of me. It's kind of more caught than taught, you know? And so I think people teased it out of me more than it just flowed out of me. And that's what I would respond. And relationship after relationship after relationship through those years, and even now, like my freshman roommate from college, he's handled all of our marketing, and he's brilliant, and he works for Oracle, and he's just next level smart. But that relationship has been enormous for me. Every business he's been a part of, and he's done marketing and all of our design work, and those kinds of things have really shaped the direction and the person that I am, more than I felt like this has just naturally come out of me. And now it's become who I am, and I think a lot of it's through those relationships.
Yeah, man. You almost can't. It always makes sense looking back, right? I guess like in the moment it doesn't seem clear. You just said, all right, I wonder if this resonates with you. Do you know Theo Vaughn?
Of course.
And do you know Joaquin Phoenix?
Mm-mm.
Do you know the name?
Joaquin.
Actor?
Oh, I've seen the recent.
Okay.
We just saw people become best buddies on a podcast.
On this podcast. Okay.
It was amazing.
Okay, so this is even going to be, I can't believe, this was not planned. So I just wrapped that up. And he said something there to Joaquin that made me kind of, or they were both talking about this part. And I want to just see if this section resonates with you at all. The conversation for our audience, because I don't need to tell Wade because he just did listen to the thing. But there's a part there where Joaquin goes, I realized after a while that I was basically trying to be somebody that I wasn't naturally. And the example he gave is the way I look, the way I act, the way I am wouldn't make sense naturally to be like the star quarterback in a movie. Right? But I am kind of this guy, because I didn't realize my face looked like this when growing up. He goes, but I'm kind of this guy that like looks suspect. Looks like he doesn't have it together, kind of klutzy, all those things. And
he'd go in a store and the clerk would follow him around.
He would follow him because that's the shoplifter, not the other guy.
Yeah,
right? Exactly. So, and I'm loving that they're laughing about this, but it did resonate with me in one part, or it did at least kind of struck me interesting that he goes, once I realized if I just leaned into what I was naturally, I could become great at that thing. Does that stick out to you at all? Like, just does any of that stuff resonate in your own life?
100%. I talk about it. I always say, stay in your lane.
Yeah.
So the illustration that I heard a pastor preach one time, and I think this is so brilliant. He talked about running a marathon, and I love this illustration so much. And he talked about, he's running a marathon and he's on pace. He's running mile 18, and somebody 20 years older than him passes him. And he starts getting down on himself. And he's like, how does this happen? How is this person that's so much older than me? He runs a couple more miles. Someone 20 pounds heavier than him passes him. He's like, what is going on? Why am I, even though he's on pace, and the illustration comes back to, you got to run your own race. And I watched a friend of mine sell his business to private equity a few years ago. And I just don't have it. I don't have an envious spirit. That's just not kind of one of my struggles most of the time. But I remember kind of being like, well, that sounds nice. There's a lot of zeros on that check. I want to do that. In the sense that that's not my race right now. I need to stick in my lane. This is my lane right now. I've got my hands in about 4 or 5 businesses. I'd probably potentially make more money if I just focused on one. Like, I recognize that. I know the hedgehog concept from Good to Great and Jim Collins. Like, I've read all that. But I feel like this is my lane. And when you're in your lane, this is the other illustration I give. When you go to the airport, you're on one of those walking sidewalks. If you're walking on one of those next to someone who's not, you shoot out in front of them, but you're not giving any more energy to it. It doesn't cost you. Matter of fact, it might give you energy being on one of those. That's when you're in your lane. When you look to your left and your right and other people that are doing the same thing you're doing, you're shooting way out in front of them, and it's not exhausting you. That's your lane, and that's where you need to run. And so that resonates with me completely, and I've given that a ton of thought, and I've talked to people about it because it's so part of kind of my story. As I look to my left and my right, my story doesn't look like other people, but sensing that I'm in my lane and it gives me energy, and I really love what I'm doing.
Do you think it's like an age thing that you start to appreciate what that means? Because I feel like the discipline required to stay there is extremely difficult. And it might not even be the flashy influencer types that you're looking over. I know a lot of folks that does happen to them. I feel like for guys like us, it's easy to be like, that's not me. Mm-hmm. When it's harder is like when I look at Wade or somebody and go, like folks you respect, that you go, oh man, maybe I need to be doing what they're doing. How do you stay disciplined either to not do that or maybe take one segment from that but not do it completely?
So a couple of things. First of all, I think I'm in a season of life. I'm 45 years old, and where I'm at in my career, I have to focus more on pruning than pursuing. I don't really have to work that hard to pursue. I wake up every day, and that's just kind of in me. I'm built for it. And I know that's really annoying to hear because it's so much of the TikTok culture is around kind of like, I wake up at 2 a.m. and I run 8 miles and all that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you get to a certain place where more opportunities come to you, then you have to go chase them. And so I have to spend some time pruning and saying, hey, this one's not for me. I need to Heisman arm that. And certainly at this stage where I've got enough relationships, I have enough of a network where I could almost pursue something new every day by looking across the street or looking and saying, man, this looks nice. I could go pursue that. I wonder if I could open that business. I wonder if I could do that. And deciding and being disciplined, use the right word, and discipline in pruning versus pursuing. That's what's become important to me over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Did you have to skin your knee a couple times to understand that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I have been down a couple of roads in the last couple of years where I think my wife has got I told you so in the back of her throat that she's not letting kind of slip out, and that's okay. You know, we're not going to bat 1,000. And you know, I've learned a lot. You know, I just spent 3 years kind of pursuing something that doesn't look like it's probably going to pan out. And I was telling somebody at lunch today that we were talking about it. There's something in me that doesn't feel like I wasted 3 years. And yet, you know, every situation's a teacher, and I'm learning. But yeah, I've got skint up knees, I can promise you.
Yeah. Kind of the path that you have to walk to get to where you can ultimately get.
That's it.
Yeah, it's funny how we all can look at. I think about it with married folks, too. You always look at the older couples that have been happily married for 40, 50 years. And you forget, or you just kind of have zero concept that they weren't like that the whole time. You kind of paying attention to the last 10-year track record. And it's like, man, it took a lot of work to get there. And you weren't maybe even alive when they're in the first 10 years. You know, that takes work, just like on yourself and all the other things that come along.
I think about that. I actually have a great deal of empathy and sympathy for singles. You know, because what marriage does is it sands down the edges, and you're forced, if you stick through it, to change. And there is that, you know, that path from being self-addicted, which we all are. You know, Donald Miller talks about that in Blue Like Jazz. We all have an issue with self-addiction, and you're moved towards selflessness. Well, that takes sanding, you know, and that's in marriage, to me, even more than having children, sands down the edges in a way that almost nothing else can.
Yeah. We were just talking about it beforehand. You got married actually fairly young.
Yeah, 21.
Yeah. I mean, for a guy or a gal who's an entrepreneur, that seems nuts. You know, most folks aren't thinking of getting married into their 30s, if ever.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, it sounds like you're happy about that.
Yeah.
In the moment, just kind of when you thought about what this meant, did you have a good idea of like what marriage meant, and also we're about to go start businesses and do all these things together?
You know, my mom was married at 16.
Okay.
And it was her second marriage. I'm just kidding. Can you imagine? What if that was the case? No, she was married at 16.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah, I know. You're going to hold it back, and that's so polite. But, you know, my dad was 21. She was 6. Is this the most Alabama story you've ever heard?
Yeah.
And
you are saying all the things that are in my mind right
of
now.
course.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to go there. I'll go there for you. You know, and so the thing that I found the thing that I believe that is entrepreneurial about it is this. It was the next step. You know, Kimberly and I had met our first day of college. We had dated all through college, and we were about to graduate, and that was the next step. An entrepreneur almost always is ready to take the next step. Mm-hmm. And so whatever that is, and I happened to be there at 21, and man, talk about skin knees, those early, you know, relationships and figuring that out a lot, I'll just tell you. But I have a philosophy on this. I go to a church here in town that is, I think the average age is about 27 years old,
okay.
Over 3,000, you know, mostly young people. And I look around, and people are waiting a long time to get married these days. And our birth rate's really low. And this is one of these things that people are like, we're not worried about that. We'll figure that out later. This is already a problem in Japan and some other places. And so if I were talking to a young person right now, I don't think the balance is to pull them towards getting married later in life. I think balance, current in today's culture, is pulling them back towards getting married a little earlier. And committing, this is a covenant. We're going to figure this out together. I'm not going anywhere. But I don't think that there's anything wrong if you meet the right person and the next step is to get married. I'm typically going to encourage that if the person's relatively measured and you know, makes wise decisions. My thing was, I was a hard worker. You know, again, okay athlete, not a great student. What was the thing that separated? I can work circles around people all my life. It's just been my thing. I could keep 100 balls in the air at one time when it come to work. And so for me, my concern wasn't, could I provide for this person? I felt very strongly that I could, and it was the next right step.
Yeah. What do you, if you don't mind indulging me, just if you could think about Wade not married early or at all maybe, and just kind of fast forward you through your first entrepreneurial journey, or maybe through Square Cow, and then think of you married, what do you think would be the major endpoint differences?
Workaholism.
Okay, you overdo it.
No question. One of the biggest tensions for Kimberly and I has always been my default mode is to wake up early, work, and then work until I go to sleep. And talk about sanding down the edges. This is an area where I was not going to miss a game for the kids. We weren't going to miss. I wasn't going to, miss a, school play. And it was through a lot of conflict that we got there. It wasn't, okay, I'll be there. I would argue and she would argue, and I made it to 99% of those things, but it was through conflict. When I talk about sanding down the edges, is my default mode, self-addiction, is I love to work. I want to go accomplish. I want to go achieve. And when you have somebody, your counterpart, saying, that's great, I want to support that most of the time, but you're going to be at this event. And because this matters to our family, and you concede and you go to that, the edge just got sanded down a little bit more. And so I think the biggest difference is, had I started my career with the sixth gear of workaholism, which is where I would have gone, I think I probably would have set myself on a tougher trajectory on my personal life.
Yeah,
I think it would have affected my relationships with my friends and my family, and then my future wife.
Yeah, it's such a killer. You saying that just reminded me of when I was in the service, this guy that was kind of you get like direct mentors, folks that you're like, we're working together. He's shepherding me, or she, whatever it is, like that's a thing. But then you get folks that kind of rove through your life. There's something about them or what they do or just who they are that you learn from, but there maybe isn't anything direct. There was this one gentleman who was a colonel at the time, and he'd kind of do these, like, he'd rotate through the battlefield. And he'd always stop by. He was a Green Beret, and just kind of one of these, like, just wholesome, but, like, no doubt a lethal warrior. And I remember picking his brain one day, just asking him. He stopped by, and just picking his brain one day, asking him just basically, like, how did I become you one day? That was, like, basically the gist of what I was asking him. I was a young officer at the time. And I was expecting some kind of like not miraculous, just something more technical, or something more like, do this assignment, go to this school, make sure you get this kind of report on your next thing. And he goes, Joseph, just be a good man, and the rest of it will take care of itself. And at the time, I was like, well, that's just a crock, man. Like, that is not what
broad.
I wanted to hear. Yeah, like, what the heck is that all about? And as I picked his brain later, like, his entire MO, and I know this guy believed it, he was just like, he was like committed to his wife. And so he's like, if I'm committed to her, and just so happens that all these other things still fell into place, but if I had done the other thing around, it wouldn't have ended up that way. But man, for guys and gals that are so impatient and, have a driver attitude and all those things, it can seem kind of an impossible thing, which is putting work differently. How would you explain to somebody, we kind of value in this world, and I think maybe since the beginning of time, that like workaholism, that person who does that is touted as, as the person to idolize, if you will. I know you got to sometimes burn your hand on the stove before you can learn, but anything that you'd also say, hey, in addition to just marriage, but rounding out those edges are important. Like, what else would you tell someone to hold on to as a good reason to maybe lean into humbling yourself sooner?
Yeah, when I was little, I'd go talk to. When my children were young, I would go do career day at their school.
Yeah,
and I would talk to them about being an entrepreneur. And for me, there might be like a private equity guy or an engineer, whatnot. And I would ask the class. I would say, well, what do you guys think about being a business owner? And most of the time, somebody would raise their hand and say, you don't have a boss. And this mentality of there's nobody above you, but there's no job beneath you. And if you're an entrepreneur and you lean into this whole idea of like, when we started the moving company, we were on a truck for 5 years. 5 years of moving furniture. I lost 40 pounds my first summer moving furniture. And talk about humbling. And guess what? We'd move furniture all day, and it would be the end of the week, and nobody would have mopped the floor, and you'd mop the floor. And nobody would have paid the bills because it's up to you. You'd have to sit down and you'd write checks or you'd pay the bills. You know, there's a natural path for most entrepreneurs in humility in the fact that there is no job beneath you. You will do anything and you will do everything. You know, if you're an architect and you work for a firm, you mostly get to draw all day. You're mostly designing and drawing. Somebody else takes out the trash. Somebody else cleans the bathroom. Somebody else pays the bills. This embracing, an entrepreneur that just embraces like, yeah, there's no job beneath me. You better believe it. Mm-hmm. I will do anything. 2 days ago, I delivered a wheelbarrow to one of my guys, put it in the back of my truck.
Yeah.
Sounds like a small example. I'm 20 years into my career, you know, several businesses. You better believe I'll load up a wheelbarrow and I'll take it right to the job site all day long. And there's no job beneath me. There is a kind of push-pull on pride and humility there that's like, it is humbling, and I embrace it. And so one of the things I would want to call out of a new entrepreneur is say, hey, don't rush to diminish that. Embrace it and say, yeah, that's me. I'll raise my hand every time on that one. You know, we would get a call early on with the moving company. And again, I'd be studying the P&L with my business partner, and we get a call and be like, hey, we got a baby grand piano. We put the P&L down, we drive, and we go help move a baby grand piano down a set of stairs. Again, nobody's above you. No job's beneath you. It's just built-in humility.
Is there a bit of mom and dad that put that in you too? Just that way of thinking?
Oh, I definitely. Yeah. Certainly. Yeah. I mean, this was part of the, you know, my mom, Enneagram 1, perfectionist. You know, you'd wake up, you think Saturday morning was about cartoons. I mean, we woke up and we cleaned. You know what I mean? I mean, this was like, you know, our house looked like it was for sale all the time. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was that clean. And so there was that sense of, you know, of hey, we work. And we've done that. Kimberly and I've done that with our 3 kids. You know, we live in an affluent area, and very few teenagers have jobs. All 3 of my kids have jobs. You know, there's a family value system here. It's like, hey, we work in this family. And so, and not because I could certainly afford your lifestyle. We could do that, but that's not what we're about. And so I do believe that it was passed on from my parents to me, and certainly a very, very important thing that Kimberly and I work to pass on to our kids.
Yeah, man. Are you a 3?
Yeah.
You are 3. Mm-hmm. For those that are on the horn here, as an achiever.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool, man. I mean, it makes sense. Sure. Those are, I would imagine, there's a lot of, I imagine that's the one that typically is I don't want to say helpers and stuff like that aren't usually have some edges that they're also rounding out, but I feel like achievers have the most sharp edges.
Oh, man. Ian Crone, one of the leading guys on Enneagram, he says the most dangerous person on the planet is an unhealthy 3. You know, if no one's there to, again, sand those edges down, man, they're a force.
Yeah.
They're very persuasive. They're very charismatic. They have a drive. They'll run through a wall. You kind of combine all those things and you bring in unhealth or deception into it. It can be a scary person. So that 3s need boundaries and guardrails, man, in a big way.
They need some good 2s and 3s, or they need some 2s out there probably.
My wife's a 2.
Is she? Yeah. Well, then you worked out, man. That worked out great. Yep. Killer. Yeah. I could talk to you all day long just about just kind of how that stuff works. I think it is. I mean, I guess to close this kind of string of thoughts out on the front of just not only partnerships and business, but probably most importantly at the house. I was talking with a buddy the other day. We were actually just commenting on each other's stuff and just how much we just completely overlook what's the director of the board at the dinner table think about that decision.
Yeah.
And I mean, the spouse is so important because it drives not only the good things, but it also drives a lot of the things that if he or she ain't on board back at the house, I almost can't. I don't care how much I pay you, how much I incentivize you, time I give you off, tighten your scope. You're having that individual in your ear when you get back, or that individual's in their ear when they get to the house. It's very difficult, and I think how have you, I guess my thought is like, how have you figured out how to, at least maybe for your key leaders, to like understand what makes them tick beyond what you know them at work? But like, who's that person they have sitting in there? Like, how much do you get into that business?
So I won't hire a manager or an executive without making them take the Enneagram. I mean, it is the single tool that I look at, and I've done a lot, Myers-Briggs and Strengths Finders and, DISC profile. I've gone through a lot of them. To me, Enneagram is the most explosive leadership tool that I've ever used. And so the other piece of that is, and this is very, very just, particular to my personality, I love to figure out what makes people tick. I love to figure out what motivates people. And so some of it is just, I really enjoy reading about psychology and, again, what kind of motivates people to make certain decisions, and even, birth order and those types of things are really interesting to me. And so when you talk about somebody, especially in the industries I'm in, which I'm hiring mostly laborers, mostly, wage earners, in those businesses, typically the owner or the operator isn't spending a whole lot of time, dialing in on what makes, what makes Chris tick, or whatever. I actually just have a really fascination with it, and so I enjoy it. We have a company called Square Cow Movers. It's to shape the animal to Ozen movers. And every year we have a conference, and we bring in all of our managers from every state, all around Central Texas and other states where we have branches. And we fly in a guest speaker, and we've gone through Enneagram, and we've talked about these things, and we've taught them how to engage their team in those things to figure out what makes them, tick and what makes them motivated to do things. We love it so much that not only are we trying to develop our team, we're trying to develop our team into people who develop people. Mm-hmm. And because when you have 200 or 300 employees, you're never going to meet all of those folks. And so you have to develop a team that's really interested in that kind of thing. And we've worked hard to do that in just our business coaching and all of our conferences throughout the years.
When did y'all start that in the biz?
So I think it's funny that you say that. So my goal was always for employees to grab onto the vision of where we're going. And so our first conference, I think, was in 2011. That means we're 3 years old.
Yeah, man.
We probably had 4 trucks at the time. And I remember going into a print shop to get lanyards made. And then the guy was like, okay, you need lanyards for an event? Great. And he got out a piece of paper and how many you need? And I said, 6. And he said, 6. He said 660, and I said, no, just 6. And he said, for an event, and again, that day, we couldn't afford anything. So I brought in another business owner that's a friend, and I paid him an honorarium. I think it was a gift card for $150, but all my guys had their name on a lanyard, and I worked on that slide deck forever. And I understand there's only 6 of us in this room, but I want you to think about where we're going when there's 80 people at the conference, and we flew in the guest speaker, because that's where we're headed. Don't mistake it. And so when we started, it was we rented out a little space at Keller Williams in Lakeway, and they gave us a great deal because we couldn't afford much, and we brought in we had food delivered and all this stuff. We probably spent all together probably $500 on the first conference ever, and that was a lot of money for us at the time. So it started small, but the vision was big from the very beginning, not just for the company, but for this event that we call the conference. And now it's become a really big deal. We've invited a lot of people to it, and our guys have truly, in a real way, been developed personally and professionally at this event we have every year.
How long did you say it was?
So we started doing that in 2011. So we've been doing it 14 years now.
And how long is the conference?
Oh, so 2 days. Apologies.
No,
yeah,
that's
two days long.
So you get to really get into it.
That's right.
So people are camping out overnight or doing whatever.
Absolutely.
It's the whole thing.
Absolutely. We get hotels and the whole thing. Yeah.
Wow, man. Well, let's talk about the biz then. How did you get into moving? Yeah. I mean, it seems there's parts of it that make sense to me right off the bat.
Sure.
But then there's other parts based on what I know now about the biz and how big it is. Just curious, like you always had a passion for moving heavy stuff.
Oh, man. So we're selling franchises now, and we had some franchises in recently, and we're going around the table, and it was amazing. These people are here to talk about this opportunity, and like 3 of them said, I hate moving, and I was like, wow,
You know what you're buying,
yeah,
right?
you know what we're doing right? And here's how I responded to that day. I said, I don't think oncologists love cancer. Their job is to fix cancer. And your job isn't to love moving, it's to fix it. And so we went into it through that lens of like, this is an industry known for, guys showing up with ankle bracelets, to move us who, they can't go so far from their house. Guys, tearing stuff up, or, my price for my move started here. Now it's blown up 3 times what it was. And we went into it thinking, okay, so there's a hole in the industry around service, and we love serving people. And we feel like we're really gifted at serving people. Next, there's low barriers to entry. You know what you need? You need a big truck and a strong back. Well, at the time I was 27 and my brother-in-law was 25. We said, well, we can figure this out. And so we knew that if the industry was not known for service, and we love serving, there was low barriers to entry. You don't need to license. You don't need a ton of equipment. And the physicality of the work is a real thing, and we felt like we could do that. All that coupled with, we aren't movers that became businessmen. This is how most moving companies start. We're businessmen that became movers. Mm-hmm. And that distinction is really important. And so those few things really steered us in this direction. Here's the other thing. A lot of people want to follow their passion. I want to love what I'm doing. I want to love moving, for instance. Well, one of the major, flexes in this whole thing is people don't like moving. And so what is often tied to that is strong margins. And I have young people come to me all the time and ask me about what they should do. And I say, well, I think you should chase strong margins. Strong margins are really, and they're like, well, I'm not passionate about it. But if you have strong margins, you're going to make a lot of money and you'll be passionate about it.
Yeah.
And so that's typically, do you want a hobby or a business? If you want a business and you chase strong margins, you're going to be okay. And that's typically where I go. And so those are the kind of boxes that we checked. And, my brother-in-law, the one that I didn't start a business with, had just moved to Austin to plant a church. And so we started in a city we'd never been to before in 2008, the worst year since the Great Depression to start a business. And we started with 3 family members and 2 trucks. And within 10 years, we were the biggest in the city of Austin. Company's been in business for 20, 30 years. And so why is that? Well, my sense is that we came into town and we said, there is no plan B. This is it. We're going to either do this or die trying. Mm-hmm. Number 2, we will outserve everybody. There will not be someone that has a better attitude. We will answer the phone with a positive attitude. We will show up. And when the client says, I want you to move the sleeper sofa again, and it's 10 o'clock at night, and you say, it's our pleasure. We'd love to. Where do you want it? It rings different. And the people of Austin, Texas grabbed onto what we were trying to do, and we've been blessed ever since.
Did you feel that right off the bat, like after doing that a few times, or did you have a moment where you go, oh man, enough people told enough people now? Like I can start feeling the momentum.
So starting in 2008, people were moving there, but they were using a radio flyer wagon.
Yeah,
really,
they were.
You know what I mean? And so
and borrowing that wheelbarrow.
They were right. That's right. We definitely struggled to fill it at first. It took some time, but I remember in the early days, we could track every call back to a single person. So somebody calls, says, hey, blah, 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 we need to move. And how'd you hear about us? And they would tell us, and we'd be like, that's because we moved Miss Johnson 2 weeks ago. That's the neighbor she told us about. Or, hey, we did some networking at that event. And that about 3 or 4 years in, the flywheel really started moving. Mm. And we'd get a call. We'd be like, how'd you hear about us? We'd be like, honestly, person say, I don't know. We heard about you guys from 2 or 3 places. And we'd be like, how's that? How's that possible? Didn't even feel like that was even possible. When things really started going about 2013, the phone was ringing and we could not keep up. I mean, this is where, it's every problem you ever wanted to have, right? But it's a problem.
Yeah.
And we didn't have the infrastructure for it. And we remembered what the famine was like, and now we have the feast. And so there's something we didn't know how to say, and that was no. And so we said yes to everything. We'd start moves at 8 o'clock at night. I mean, literally. And it was day after day. And so, the business starting in a recession, a major recession, And then moving into Feast, where the phone's ringing off the hook, this is a real struggle for a small business, understanding how to build that infrastructure and create a pipeline of leadership and start doing those kinds of things. But that's honestly how it played out at the beginning.
I think about the commitment you made. Like, was there like a blood pact? Because I imagine if someone is in your shoes starting in 2008, how do you go that long? Was it a promise you made behind the scenes? It's like, with it or on it kind of thing, or was there something else that drove you? Because I think that's probably where there's many. It reminds me of folks that go singing around in Nashville, and there's a lot of artists that will tell you, if I didn't play that one more gig, I wouldn't have got discovered. And I just, I can't take any credit other than I just decided to say yes to one more gig. Yeah. Not quit till tomorrow. What was that for you?
It's the reason that I can't say this with absolute certainty, but it's the reason I'm almost certain I'll never start a business by myself. My business partner, my brother-in-law, he and I, when I was down, he was up. And when he was down, I was up. We were going to encourage each other every step of the way. And we never talked about it. It's just naturally what you do. Same thing, you go to coffee with a friend and his marriage in a bad place. You just say, hey, come on, man, you got this. Why don't you think about these things? You're going to encourage him. It's your natural state. That's how you operate, right? Well, in a business, it's very much the same. And so, we would finish a move. I mean, commonly, all the time, we finish a job in Houston, Derek and I, at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. We get in bed at 4 o'clock in the morning. We'd get up at 6 o'clock the next morning, do it all over again, day after day. I don't know how to run a business by myself, for the only reason that I lean so heavily on my business partners to do what I just described, which is to be that force of encouragement for each other. And so I don't know that there was ever a time where you promise and I promise. It was just a mutual understanding that this will work. We have been called to this, and this is going to happen. I sat down it was a Calference dinner, and one of our early employees, a guy named Mike Paulson, we were sitting down each other with Maggiano's. There's 25 people there at dinner, and we invited everybody's spouses and all this stuff. So this is probably 4 or 5 years into the Calferences, and we had just hit 20 trucks. And Mike says, hey, boss, you just hit 20 trucks. I said, I know, Mike, it's awesome. He goes, did you ever think you would? And I said, every single day, every single day, even the worst of days, we were like, that's where we're going. And we might have been lying to ourselves, when we would lie to each other, but we knew the goal was we're going to grow. This thing will grow. And so that was the only mode we had for those first few years. And one of the things you see was so hard to get people to understand is how hard it is to start things. So we have this graph of trucks. Everybody has these different ways of rating where your business is. And so in our industry, it's trucks. It's not like how much profit or how many employees or how many trucks you got. That's what it is. I mean, how many trucks you running?
It's probably the most Alabama thing.
It's
you
right.
Can have, yeah.
And by the way, the guy that sells us our trucks, his name's Bubba. You can't make this up. It's true. So we have this graph of, starting with 2 trucks in 2008, and it took us 5 years to get to 6 trucks, and then took us another 5 years to get to 60. And I tell this to people, it was harder to go from 2 to 6 than it was to go from 6 to 60. And I think some people hear that as hyperbolic. So I repeat it. It was harder to go from 2 to 6 than it was to go from 6 to 60. The first part of a business is excruciating. But the part I talked about where that flywheel's going and the phone's ringing off the hook, it's the most exhilarating, most fun thing you will ever do. You can't skydive and get the same feeling.
Yeah.
But I wish for young entrepreneurs or new entrepreneurs, I could say, hey, just stick with it. It's coming. Live lean. There was lean Christmases, man. We didn't bring every dime that came in, we put back in the business, buy another truck, hire another driver. Let's move another sofa. What can we do? Because we're waiting for that time when the flywheel's going. It is, you can't put a price on it. It's the most fun thing in the world. But to get to that place, you got to go through the hard times. And those first few years are really, really hard.
You probably didn't know that at the time, huh? You just kind of like, it was
Living on faith, baby.
living on faith,
Yeah.
living on being a 3.
That's it.
Yeah, those kinds of things.
That's right.
It's weird. Why do you think that kind of advice? I mean, there are some folks I think will heed it and go, heck yeah, okay, thanks for that. I think most people would say thanks for that. But it's like, what do you think that is in our programming that like we got to get burned by the stove, otherwise we're not going to really know it.
Right.
We'll go, Wade told me, but I
Right.
should have listened.
Right.
What do you think that is? It's just kind of like people being self-absorbed and going, I'll be different though.
Right. Well, I think that anything worth doing is hard. I sat down with one of our managers at Square Cow. It's been probably 8 or 9 years now, and you know he wasn't performing. And I got up early in the morning. I drove down to South Austin where his branch was, and I just showed up. And that's never good, you know.
Yeah,
and I walked in. I said, "Hey, we need to have a talk." And we're talking, and he says, "Hey," he said, "Boss, man, this is harder than I thought it was going to be." I said, "I get it. That makes sense." I said, "You're married, right?" He said, "Yes, sir." "Marriage easy?" "No, sir." "Is it worth it?" "Yes, sir." "You got kids, right?" "2." "Yes, sir." "Raising kids easy?" "No, sir." "Is it worth it?" "Yes, sir." I don't know of anything that's easy that's worth doing. And I think inside of us, we know that, you know, the state of Tennessee, where I went to college, I serve on the board there. And so we get all the statistics, and the state of Tennessee started doing a similar scholarship that a lot of other states does. If you stay in the state and you graduated from high school, you have a certain GPA, they'll let you go to community college for free. And this affects the university that I'm on the board of. So we talk about this, like, what are we doing to work through this and this kind of thing? Because kids now can get 2 years free education. So for a private Christian university, this is a problem. The graduation rate of students who get free school is 14%. Because what's free isn't worth having. Mm. And so I think inside of us, we know that. And so I think for the entrepreneurs that are going through a hard time, or or it's in those early stages, or they're either heeding or not heeding the advice, I think in our DNA we know if it's worth doing, it's going to be hard. And so when hard comes and discomfort comes, there's a part of us that's not surprised, but it's something you got to lean into. And so, you know, I think some of those thoughts apply here, you know, and I think a business that's worth growing you're going to have a tough road at some point.
Yeah. Going back to Kimberly, how was that? How did y'all help each other keep in the game?
Yeah.
I would imagine she had a lot of belief in you to be able to that's not the spouse of an entrepreneur is not a short order.
It's terrible.
It's terrible, man.
It's terrible. So we call those our dark years, literally. You know, we gave a talk at church a few weeks ago, and we talked about our dark years. And so those are the years where I worked 16-hour days because I had to. You know, I would show up to the kid's birthday, but I'd look like the dad who'd given up on life. You know what I mean? Because I just got off a truck, you know, and I'm going to go get back on a truck after I see him cut the cake.
Yeah.
This was trying. And I talked to a young entrepreneur who's married and going through the same thing a while back, and he's like, "What did you do?" I said, "It was really hard. Like I can't give you the 1, 2, 3 on this and say everything's going to be great. I mean, it was just I don't know how to manage a perfect work-life balance in the early stages of a business. Somebody else has to write that book." So when you say, how did Kimberly deal with it? Not well, and neither did I. But, you know, Dave Ramsey's live like no one else so you can live like no one else.
Yeah.
So we lived like no one else, so now we can live like no one else. So, you know, we went to Italy last year and Spain the year before that. And, you know, we take our kids skiing and we live on a lake. And so we're out wake surfing, you know, every couple days. And could we have gotten there, you know, without going through that hard time? I don't know. JC, if I'm being honest, I don't know if we could have.
Yeah.
And so it was hard. It was hard on our marriage. It was hard. It was memories for us as we talk about them as marriages do. They're not all rosy, but it's what we feel like we had to go through to get where we are.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I think for a lot of folks, It almost seems like they're doing it wrong if these other things aren't in check.
Right.
Or probably even worse is, especially with the entrepreneur or the driver out there, kind of beating up your spouse, not literally, but just like, even just like, oh, you don't understand what I'm doing here and everything else. It's a crazy thing they signed up for. Yeah. And the fact that they're still around is worth a lot, because it is nuts being strapped to a rocket ship that's never been to space. It's nuts. I mean, if you think about what you're asking them to do, if they're like, I'm holding on, but I'm not liking it, there's a lot of weird things that we don't see that kind of grace right away. It's very easy to dismiss as not important. And I think it's not till later in life, after you kind of make it through the stratosphere and you start figuring out what it looks like and how all these things work, it seems to me that it's easier to go like, again, dots connecting backwards easier than looking forward. Seems like, oh yeah, this was all kind of put together. I appreciate you saying that, though, because I think there's a lot of folks out there that maybe give up on it too soon, too, because they think, oh, I don't, like, it doesn't seem like chemistry's working. She's not into this. He's not into this. Heck, nobody's into that.
I said dark years, not dark days.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it was a long haul. And to your point, one thing that really helped me, and maybe it'll help a listener, I heard a leadership talk by Andy Stanley. He talked about seasons. And we kind of as humans will adopt things as forever when they're not. You know, when you have young kids, you know, when our kids, so my kids they're, you know, sophomore, junior, senior this past year in high school. So they're back to back to back.
Wow, man.
And so, you know, that means we had a 1, a 2, and a 3-year-old. And this idea is like, we don't sleep anymore. You know, these kids are up all the time, you know, and you're like, no, for a season, we didn't sleep as much for a season. And I had a friend who had young kids, and he's like, he loves movies. He loves going to the movies. And he was lamenting about this. And, you know, for a season, you're not going to go to the movies. If we can adopt this idea of, hey, look, this is hard. It's a season. This is a hard season of my life. It's easier for us to say, but there's a light at the end of this tunnel. And if we can make it through the season, me and you as our marriage, hey, this is a tough season. Let's lock arms on this and know that we're going to get through this. It's when we start thinking this is perpetual, this will never end. And most of the time that's a lie. But it's a lie we tell ourselves pretty often. And if we get caught in that, then we want to quit.
Then we want to quit. And the opposite's true too, right? We think the good is forever too.
Oh,
and you start building your life. That's where
easier.
That's the lifestyle creep starts coming in.
That's right.
We're going to be good forever.
That's exactly right.
You know, and let's overextend ourselves and all those other things. You know.
Well, the whole idea of the biggest threat to future success is current success.
Yeah.
Because our default mode is complacency, not urgency. And you know, that whole thought just blew my mind a few years ago. My biggest threat to succeeding in the future is the fact that I'm successful now. Mm-hmm. And leaders are disruptors. They go in, especially when you're successful, and they say, hey, what are we doing? Why are we moving this slow? I don't want the phone to ring more than one ring. I want us to pick it up. Hey, if we got the money and we get a bill in, I don't care if it's 30-day net, pay it. We are going to adopt urgency in this organization because that's what leaders do. They're disruptors. They're constantly disrupting because they know that our default mode is comfort. Our default mode is never urgency. And so leaders are always trying to create that urgency in other people because they know the default mode is what it is.
What do you got going on now, man? What are the things? I imagine after so many years of just grinding and building, you've got several businesses that you're involved with.
Yeah.
What's the world look like for Wade now? Still very, I mean, you talked about delivering a wheelbarrow, but is it the same kind of things where you're jumping on and off trucks, or is it a lot more, I love and hate the word strategy.
Sure.
Because it's kind of I think a consulting cop-out to make it seem like you're doing something very intellectually important, when the reality of it is most strategies for companies, this is Joseph Carreira's opinion, but most strategies for companies were backwards engineered from just a bunch of tactical stuff that actually happened, and you found a couple of things that worked, and then you said it was a strategy. But I'm curious, what is the work that you're doing now? I imagine it's different.
So it is different. And I don't recommend it for everybody. And I said earlier, I feel specifically called to be a serial entrepreneur. And it started about 2018 when a close friend of mine comes to me and says, hey, I'm going to go start a flooring company that just does carpet. And he pitched the idea, the specific idea or his strategy, I'll use that word, that he pitched to me was brilliant. It was so smart. And I said, oh man, do it. Like, I love it. And he's like, well, the URL is going to be 2,500. And I was like, dude, I'll write you a check right now. Like, as a friend, just go do it. I believe in you this much. Well, that guy went and started the company and then comes back to me about 6 months later and says, hey man, I really feel like I need a business partner. He says, I don't need you in the office every day. I want someone to bounce ideas off of. I need an advisor. Would you want to buy in? And I said, if you ever give equity away again, I will punch you in the face. Like, this is the most precious thing. Don't do this. I'll help you. But no, like, how, and he comes back to me about 6 months later and he says, I really, really want you to be my business partner. And I said, let me give it some thought. And at this point, I was so focused on Square Cow, the company we started in 2008. And I started thinking about, what, I can give this guy a couple hours of my time a week. And so I invested in that business, and that business has taken off. It's a carpet company. So now we have moving and we have carpet. And then I had, my friend who's done all our marketing and want to go out and start a marketing agency. And I invested in that, took a little piece of that. And then, I get to know a local builder here in Austin, and he's got a service business where they're the handyman service to this big luxury homes. And, I just wanted to meet him. I just admire what he's done and sit down with him for a couple of meetings. And before I know it, I'm in business with him and trying to build this handyman business. So what's the thread here? The thread is mostly home services. Mm-hmm. I'm particularly good at going in the living room of people, specifically families, 2.5 kids and a dog, going into their living room and saying, hey, I'm going to serve you well. How can we do this? Whether it's carpet or whether it's moving or whether it's handyman services, that is my lane, and I'm running that lane. But it's opened up other opportunities. I just invested in a Western wear company, which is kind of interesting. I'll talk to you more about that later. But, a guy here in Austin who really great story. It's called Saints Western. He got alopecia about 6 years ago.
Okay.
And all his hair is falling out. And here's a guy who loves, to dress to the nines. He's really, really sharp dresser. Really cool, full sleeve tattoos. The kind of guy, I always look like I just got done like sailing. You know what I mean? Like, this guy looks like a real man's man. And he started making custom hats because he wanted to cover up his head. So then they come up, this crazy story, come out with a miracle drug and his hair comes back, but he's been making hats and he starts making these hats and it starts picking up. And then now it's turned into this business. And so we just invested in that and brought this guy into a space that we have for him to run that business. And so now I'm getting to do some fun things, which I don't know anything about that, but I'm curious about it. And I've got these other things that are working, that are making me money. And so why can't I go and have some fun over here and see what happens?
Yeah.
I'm a 3, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an achiever. And so my fun is to go and build things. And so, man, I want to help this guy out. He needs some help. And so helping him run with Saints Western, my goodness, that's dessert for me. And so, there's another company that I'm kicking the tires on. They build, docks and decks and those kinds of things. And again, I mentioned I live on a lake, and, I'm like, not very many people doing great work in that area, in my opinion, that I'm aware of. Maybe, that's a home service, So you asked me what I'm doing. I'm doing a lot. And I really like all the things that I'm doing. I'll tell you this, 10 out of 10 times, I'm more interested in the jockey than the horse. Every time. The moving company, my brother-in-law and my dad, I'd invest with them 10 out of 10 times, all day. My brother-in-law is a mule. He will work. 5 years we were in a truck. I never heard him complain one time. Not one time. I complained all the time. You know what I mean? My carpet now business partner, a guy named Ben, I would invest in him 10 out of 10 times. Whatever idea he has, he's that kind of guy you invest in. And so these businesses, the guy with the Saints Western, I'm investing in him, not the business. I'm investing in him. He is a hustler. And I don't mean that in any derogatory way. I mean, he get out there and work. He makes things happen and he networks. And so most of my investment strategy is around the jockey more than it is the horse. And so if I believe in somebody and I believe they've got a dog inside them and they've got a good idea, man, I want to get behind that. It's fun. That's dessert for me.
I mean, it's clear to me that part of your secret sauce about being able to do so much, and I imagine well, is because you have a core jockey in that thing that's running the thing. Where does Wade sit in that as a partner? Do you find that there's a specific gift you have in that? Obviously, in my mind, obviously great vision and a driver. What is the other thing that you find as a common thread amongst all these businesses that if they were going to pay you a compliment, they'd say, Wade does this the best for us?
I would hope that they would say that Wade finds a way to fill the gaps. And so, the Saints Western guy, Derek, say, hey, man, I don't know anything about business. I'm like, I got you. I've got somebody that can help with our finances and bookkeeping and get us set up, and we'll get an LLC. I can do all that. I'm going to fill that gap. You go find your lane. You do what you do, and let me figure out all the people that need to come alongside you. I'm going to fill that gap. For Square Cow right now and selling franchises, I'm the best guy to go in and pitch. And so I show up, and that's the gap they have. We've got a brilliant operator guy named Cole that does franchise development. He's so good. He's not a salesman. What's the gap? Somebody needs to come in and sell these things. So I'll go in there and I'll do the dog and pony show, and I love it. And so what I would hope my business partners at every business would say is, hey, if there's a gap, if Wade can't fill it himself, he finds somebody that can, that's top notch, and he holds them accountable. So I can go do the thing that only I can do. If a leader, there are tasks that only a leader should be doing. And the quicker they can shed themselves of the things they shouldn't be doing, and they can just focus on the stuff they should be doing, the quicker that thing's going to grow. Now, at first, you can't. You got to keep 100 balls in the air. You got to do the bookkeeping. You got to do all that. But as quickly as you can. And so my goal is to help them shed those things that are anchors to the ship and dragging along the bottom of the ocean so they can sail and they can get the stuff done that has to be done.
Yeah, it's got to be powerful for them. I also imagine that it's something you probably, I don't want to say effortless, but it doesn't, like you said, it's like dessert. It's probably a thing that it just keeps feeding the fire.
I love it.
Yeah, that's a thing that I think for a lot of folks from a self-awareness perspective, sometimes hard to put a finger on at early days because there's a lot of obligations and duties. You just have to get it done.
Yeah.
But it's hopefully not losing a hand on the pulse of when you can, what does that stuff look like? And I think that's probably the hardest at some point is shedding that because you feel like maybe one, is somebody else going to do it as good? Or two, you feel some kind of guilt because you feel like you should keep doing it. When the reality of it is, I had a friend of mine, man, he's him and his family run a pretty big, they own a pretty big piece of chunk in Africa there, and they run a preserve out that way. And he kind of said something along the lines of, there was a point in time where I recognized that the thing my folks needed me to be the best at was me.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, that's a hard thing to do. He goes, because it seems guilty. Like, what do you mean? I just got to be me? Now, what he does for a living is galvanize a lot of attention for what they do because of how he is. He's charismatic. He can really just bring gravity, magnetism to a thing. He has got immediate trust building. He goes, and when I was trying to help all these other things, he goes, it was wearing me out and not allowing me to be the thing they need me to be. The thing that I have in my mind is like nobody tells the F1 driver, hey, I need you to also like load the tires and do these things because, be a good team player. It's like, no, man, I need you to drive the crap out of that car.
That's right.
That's the only thing I need you to do and win because if we win, then everything else is fine.
That's right.
And I think that's did you have a guilt moment? Did you have that moment where it was hard to break that piece?
So I feel like one of the things I'm pretty good at is giving things away. Leadership, the most basic definition is set clear expectations and hold people accountable. And it's most basic. I have set very clear expectations of what I'm expecting from you, and now I'm going to hold you accountable. And that sounds kind of punitive. It's not meant to be. But that's really good leadership where I know what winning is here, and I know my boss is paying attention, and he's going to come alongside and either say, hey, we need to work on this, or man, you're killing it. And so I've always been pretty good at those two pieces. When I was talking about going to my kids' school and doing career day, I would take a friend of mine who's a doctor, his lab coat, and I would put on the lab coat in front of the kids, and I'd say, guys, I want y'all to pretend that I'm a surgeon. I would say, what do y'all think about surgeons? And these kids would shoot their hand up and be like, man, surgeons make so much money, so much. This is always the answer. I'm like, you're right. And I said, but I want you to think about this. A surgeon makes as much as his two hands can make him. An entrepreneur is leveraged by other people. So if a surgeon is here talking to you guys, in theory, he's not making money. And I'm making money right now as I'm speaking to you guys. This very basic understanding of business really hit me early on, which is I am leveraged by other people. And so if I'm going to go do the thing that only I should be doing, which is in my lane, it's shooting out front on that walking sidewalk at the airport, that means I've got to have other people doing the things I'm really terrible at. And man, there are some things like accounting. I'm really good with money. I'm really good at reading a P&L. But if I had to put it together, like I literally do not care if it's $10,000 off.
Yeah.
But I'm smart enough to know that I need to, and somebody on my team that does care. And so I need to go find someone that cares deeply if it's $1 off. And so I have to, from an early stage, I was very aware that this is only going to work if we're leveraged by other people. So how quickly can we hire a driver, teach him about our culture, make him evangelize our culture, and then send him out to do what he did, and then go find another one for another truck and do it over and over and over. It's all through duplication that we're going to be able to do this. And so for whatever reason, that whole idea really came clear to me pretty early.
When you think about, and as we're closing out, man, Wade, thank you, brother.
Yeah.
This has been, I could talk to you for hours. I think the thing that I'm always trying to figure out how to help folks recognize in themselves or in others, if they have what it takes to live this life. What are the things that, as you look at those jockeys you bet on, that stick out to you as common factors? I know they all have different personalities and styles probably, but what are the core things from maybe a character perspective that you go, like that dude or dudette is just a winner. Like that person's going to figure it out no matter what. What is that in him that you can see?
Grit. And I wish there was a better word, because I feel like the word's been watered down over the last few years.
Yeah.
We talk about this a lot. You know, how do you judge the dog in somebody? And, you know, if you have a way of, or some kind of aptitude test or some way of judging that in somebody, they have to have the ability to stick with a business or a task or a job through what a lot of people would feel like are impossible situations. And the grit in somebody, it's the thing when you get done, you know, at midnight working, you get back up and you do it again the next day at 6 a.m. and you do it over and over, not for a long weekend, not for a tough summer, for a couple of years in the beginning. That piece, what is Patrick Lencioni? It's humble, hungry, and smart. You know, and so somebody that has humility to be self-aware. That's what humility. They're smart, yeah, but they're hungry. Mm-hmm. The fire in the belly is the piece that is really, really elusive, and I don't know how you do it without it. I've always said I don't care if you're the smartest person in the room. I don't really care if you're, if you've got the fire in the belly, like you won't take no. You'll hear 100 no's, and for you, that's just, hey, come on,
yeah,
let's go. And so that grit is the best quality in my opinion.
Do you look for track record, or are you mainly looking for what they're doing in the moment as they're talking to you? Are you looking at both? Is there something that kind of helps you sniff that out? Yeah,
track record matters for sure. Most everybody that I've invested in, I've known for a number of years. Mm-hmm. And so I've seen, and then there's a runway there where we're getting to know each other, and I'm judging along the way of, their level of commitment and that kind of thing. So there are some factors in there that feel obvious. That grit and perseverance is so big. Everything else is really a distant second for me.
Yeah. What as we close out, Wade, anything exciting that you have on top of mind right now, that even if it's personal, just anything that you're getting fired up about here is in the immediate future?
That's such a good question. I tell you what, I need to pause and think about that kind of thing more than I do. Actually, I give people advice about this. Like, you need a young guy who owns a vintage clothing shop I've gotten to know from my church. And he reaches out to me for advice from time to time. And he just got a permanent retail shop. And he's been looking, we've been talking about this for months. And I'm so proud of him. And I texted him the other day. I said, man, you need to stop and celebrate. Like, I don't care if it's a steak dinner. I don't care if it's a staycation, man, like stop. And I give that advice because I'm so terrible at it. You could ask me that a year from now, what are you excited about? And I'm kind of like, I'm excited about some of these new investments. I'm excited about where some things are going, but man, I really am not great at stopping and kind of celebrating. And I need to get better about that. I need to stop and say, what am I excited about? Just a one foot in front of the other. And so that's an area that I really need to work on.
Yeah. No, it's good because as a working, it reminds me of and I mean this complimentary, man, because I kind of probably resonate the same way, or probably can relate a lot. It reminds me of I have a hunting dog, a working dog, and I don't know that he doesn't delineate happiness and work. Like, to them, it's kind of the same. Mm-hmm. It's like existing. That's life for him. And I think it's the way guys like that, like probably like you, are kind of cut from. What's hard to get excited about is it's almost like, I want to call it obligatory, but there's just something about the way you live that doesn't seem like there's anything special about it, because it's like the only way you know how to be.
100%. That's never heard anybody put it that succinctly, but you're exactly right. Yeah.
So it's finding ways to probably, I don't know, maybe our wives can continue to humble us or whatever it might be. But Wade, brother, thank you for coming on today. I think not only are you going to help a lot of folks out there as you've done before, and we want to thank you. I mean, you've helped aspiring owners before and folks who want to pursue this path, but I think more than anything else, just the raw, candid feedback. Part of the thing that the entire even show came together was to help folks really kind of understand the humans behind it all, because ultimately it is the whole jockey. I can put an incredible human behind any kind of business and it'll be great because they'll figure out a way to win, 100%. Whatever it might be. And so I just want to say thanks for being an example of that and giving us a ton more examples to reflect on.
Man, it's my pleasure. Like I said, I love hanging out here. I love seeing you guys. And so anything I can do to serve you guys, I'd feel is a privilege.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely be calling on you, man, as we already have. So thanks for everything you do.
You got it.
Thanks for tuning in to the American Operator Podcast, where we celebrate the backbone of America, small business owners and operators like you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you'll never miss out on more of these stories and insights from people who keep our community strong. Until next time, keep building, keep operating, and keep America moving forward.